Hello, hello. Welcome to She's Doing All Right. I'm the host, Sarah Carter, and today's topic is on enoughness or the lack thereof, not feeling like we are enough. So thanks for sitting here with me today and listening, or if you're on for a walk, I hope that this is good accompaniment. So let's get right into this. I have been reading through a lot of my old journals, and I have like 10 to 20 years, no, not 20, sorry, 10 to 12 years of journals. And the overwhelming theme that I'm seeing from my 20s is that I was never feeling like I was enough. And what really surprised me though was how recent that some of that was. Like in motherhood, I just realized, wow, I'm writing all this stuff and I know I don't feel like I'm enough as a mother. That's something I'm always working on, but it's just really different to see it and see how long it's been bothering me. This is why I love writing, because you can look back and you're like, wow, the same thing has been an issue or has been coming up for years. So I should really like bring that to therapy. Maybe I should like really dive into this, So yeah, I'm really finding that the theme of not enoughness has been something I think I need to deal with. I need to figure that out. And I don't think it's something that we're ever not going to deal with. I think that's just part of life as a woman and as a mom and everything like that. But I think it's worth a shot of trying to feel like I am enough. And I do think that there are people out there who truly know that they are enough. And I want to be like them. So I'm reading this book right now called The Voice of Knowledge. And it's the follow-up book, I think, to The Four Agreements. It's written by the same author. And this was such perfect timing. So I'm reading it for my month of February. And in this book, the author is talking about how when he was 12 years old, he goes to his grandfather, who's like a shaman in the village. And he is telling his grandfather all the stuff he knows, all of his opinions. And he's trying to kind of impress his grandfather, like, you are this wise man, and now listen to my wise opinions. And the grandfather starts sort of addressing him like, this is all great, but those are all lies. Like, those are just your perspective of the truth. Or of your perspective of the situation. And as he's feeling like a little bit down from this and like a little upset, his grandfather tells him, all of the drama you suffer in your personal life is the result of believing in lies, mainly about yourself. And the first lie that you believe is that you are not. You are not the way you should be. You are not enough. You are not perfect. And then he goes on to say that we are born perfect. We are, like, every human is perfect. And we are told from the very beginning that nobody is perfect. It's even used as like our immediate justification for things. Like, I know, like, I'm only human, I'm not perfect. But it's actually, no, you are perfect. The things around us have told us we are not enough. So then we do things that maybe are questionable to try to become enough. And that could be anything from, I don't want to get too specific because I feel like I'm thinking of people and I don't need to share information I don't need to share. But in my own life, for example, what would I do to try to be enough? I wouldn't say no. I would give up all of my time. And obviously, like, I have, like, generosity is really important to me, but so are boundaries. And boundaries didn't start becoming a thing for me until maybe the last 3 or 4 years as I've really started to work on it. So I think that feeling like I'm enough that feeling has gotten stronger with the more boundaries I set, because it's showing me I can set this boundary and people aren't going to leave, or they're not going to hate me. But my first reaction, even now, when I set a boundary or I have to cancel plans or anything, my first reaction is, I have to cancel this. They're going to be upset and I'm just going to have to deal with that. And they're never upset. I don't surround myself with people who get annoyed by things like that. So that work of how we come to feeling like we are enough is difficult work to do. So first, I wanted to talk about when we begin, like, when's the first time we started feeling like we're not enough? And I think that this depends on culture, religion. There's a lot of different things, society. But our parents can often start. The most common one I'd say is parents telling you, like, well, make your bed. Good children make their bed. But what they're inadvertently telling you is that bad children don't make their bed. Therefore, if you don't make your bed, you are now a bad child. And then that can lead into, like, if you have a house that's got cups around it. Now, lazy people have messy houses, and the house might not even be a mess, but because there's something not away, it's now out, or it's a mess in your mind, and you now look at that one cup on the counter and you perceive yourself as being lazy. And so, which is, again, that's the form of being like you're not working hard enough, right? So I think that that's very broad. I know that if you're raised in a religion like I was, you're immediately told that you're not enough and you cannot achieve perfection, but you should try, which is one of the most ironic and strange things to me. But that's a tough one. I had thoughts on that, but I decided not to include them in this because it's a little bit of a sidetrack. But essentially, we eventually believe that these lies are truths. People can tell us you're too noisy, or you don't listen enough, like all this different stuff, which they might be true, but they are also someone's perception of you. So if it doesn't bother you and it's not hurting those people, it's okay. Obviously, our actions can hurt people's feelings. And this is where it gets a little bit murky. I think that we do want to take accountability for our actions and improve. So therefore, we want to hear our feedback from friends or from people in our lives. But at the same time, we are not responsible for their feelings. So surrounding yourself with people who are accountable for themselves is going to be a big part of feeling like you are enough. Because if you are with people who are going to always put the blame on you or always tell you you're not good enough, then you're never going to feel good enough. That's a very, very tough environment to grow in. It's like planting a flower on cement, and you have a slim chance of getting things to bloom. So the people you surround yourself are going to be very, very important. But yeah, I think our not enoughness begins very early in life. Even magazines saying like, oh, this person's not skinny enough. But you're looking at that magazine going, well, I look like them. So that means that I'm not enough then either. And then we'll start, usually to counter that, we start doing the things we think we need to do to get the people to love you. So, or to get whatever attention is that we need, right? To feel like we are enough. So for me, that was saying, like, I wouldn't say no to things and I would just constantly say yes and give my all. And it was draining me emotionally and physically and spiritually. And setting boundaries was where I had to set that for myself. And the biggest lesson was learning that me setting my boundaries and me saying, hey, I'm enough without all of this was received very well by people. So, and the ones that didn't receive it very well, they're not really around very often. And that's okay as well. Because I think when I start seeing that I'm not enough, when I start thinking that I am enough, and I believe that, there are things that as I'm growing, I'm starting to see that, like, I hold myself to a different standard is what I'm saying. So now I look at other people in my life and I start wishing that they would live to that standard, which isn't right because they have their own standard. But depending on who that person is and what kind of state of energy they're in, that can be pretty uncomfortable for them, right? So I think when somebody leaves, we get quite defensive and people are like, you'll never get me back, or like, you just lost the best thing that ever happened to you. And that's yes, I get that it's confident, but also like, why can't we just let them go? It's okay to let people go. It's not their job to like you. And it's not your job to make them like you. You are enough without that person or without their opinion or without anything. You're enough as you are. So yeah, I hope that makes sense and wasn't too ranty. As the book goes on, back to the book, the grandfather, so Miguel's trying to then counteract that, and he's like, okay, I understand. And he's pretending to say that he agrees and understands with his grandfather when he actually doesn't really understand it at all. And his grandfather looks at him and says, Miguel, I can see that you are trying hard to impress me, to prove to me that you are good enough for me. And you have the need to do this because you are not good enough for yourself. And I think that that's where we, as a society, do not take accountability. Rather than addressing that we are not feeling good enough for ourselves, we try to tell other people, you made me feel this way. But they didn't. They cannot, no one can say something to you that you haven't already said to yourself. The things that people say to us, they really only hurt us if we already believe them because we've said them to ourselves. If someone comes up to you, for example, and is saying like, oh, your skin is blue and it's really weird. If you look down and you're like, I know my skin is not blue. So first of all, you don't care about their opinion. They're a stranger. And second of all, you're going to think they're a little crazy because what they're saying does not match your truth. But perhaps they are actually seeing you as blue. And so they could look like their perception is different. If you have a really funky haircut or something and you did it for you and you love it, it could be like a mohawk or something that I know when I was growing up, those were like the strange haircut. Like the people with mohawks were so strange. And I'd see people go to to the mohawk people and wearing, oh, that's a group of people. I shouldn't maybe say it like that. But they'd go up to, like someone would go up to a person with a mohawk and tell them to their face, your hair is ugly and you look scary and you can't be trusted. Like it was just all these assumptions made off of someone from something like a haircut. But the cool thing I noticed is that those people who were given those comments usually didn't really care because that's not how they saw themselves. They knew they were trustworthy. They knew they weren't a criminal. They knew that their hair was just an expression of who they were. So the words that someone told them didn't really bother them. Now, if they had like an insecurity and they were trying to put their hair up to make it look like they're deflecting from something else, then if someone tells them something mean, they might have a different reaction to it, you know? So the point of that is just that the original line, all this drama and suffering that we have in our life is all because of the lies we believe about ourselves. So the whole book here has changed my perspective in two ways. Number one is that when I have an issue with someone not acting the way I would like them to, I can see that I am feeling like I'm not enough, and then I am projecting, and I'm trying to distract of my own feelings of unworthiness. So instead I'm asking them to change. And it's something I'm trying to balance because I still think, like I said earlier, I still think it's really important to help each other grow and encourage each other to grow, but growing within who that person is. So my thing, me and my husband, I would love for him to encourage me to go to the gym and encourage me to make better food choices. For him, he doesn't want to be told to go to the gym. He does not want to be told to do anything like that, even though for me, I want it because it makes me feel good. It makes my head feel better. I think clearer. My endorphins are out, right? He just feels like a chore. So me telling him or suggesting that he goes to the gym, even though he might want it because he knows long-term it's going to be good for him, it still feels like a chore. So it might not be the best for him. Whereas if I suggest he goes plays hockey with some friends, he's got it right away. He'd love to do that. So whereas for me, hockey feels like a waste of time. but I think that finding people that help us grow in our own growth pattern, not theirs, right? We don't have to fit everyone else's growth pattern. So that means supporting each other in things we don't necessarily always agree on rather. But the second thing that I learned here, or that my perspective has changed, is kind of what I was just saying, is that other people are enough as they are. If we are enough, then so are they. And that is really tough. You kind of can get into the whole love your enemies situation with that too, where you have to learn to accept the fact that the people you hate the most and the people that have hurt you the most, they have their own story, they have their own perspective of the truth, and it's a different version of yours, and other people believe them, and in their little world, they are also enough, without changing, without anything. So I do think it's important that we let people go. I don't know if I've said this already, but it's good that we let people go, because if we don't feel like they are enough, by letting them go, you are letting them find people who do think they are enough and who remind them that they are enough. And likewise for yourself, if someone lets you go, it's not always a bad thing. Like, rather than trying to find your value and your enoughness in that person or with that person, use it as an opportunity to find your value and worthiness in yourself, and to learn and remind yourself that you are enough no matter where you are in life. So I wanted to move into, how do we feel like we are enough? I'm trying to like put these things into categories so I don't get so sidetracked during my podcast because I feel like I need it to be a little more cohesive, right? So how do we feel like we are enough? It starts with the mindset first, is what I've taken away so far. It starts with something like we have to feel it with such a strong conviction. And in order to do that, we have to spend time with ourselves and figure out what interests you and what makes you interesting. I asked my husband the other day, like, because he said, oh, you don't really seem to want to engage with me. And I couldn't even deny it. I was like, well, no, you're kind of boring to me right now. Like, if I'm being honest, I have so many books I wanted to read and I can't really talk and read. And my books are more interesting than you right now because you've told me the same story of work all week and you don't have a life outside of work. So then there's nothing to talk about. You're not an interesting person, to be honest. And that might sound really harsh. My husband and I talk about this a lot though. So, and like, I don't say it in a mean way. And if that hurts your feelings, don't be with someone who talks to you like me. Basically avoid Aquariuses. So anyway, my husband I asked him, like, what do you think makes you interesting? Or do you think you are interesting? And it's not an attacking question. I'm not trying to like have you justify. I want to know, do you think you're interesting? And as he was thinking about it, he's like, no, not really. I'm like, okay, well, I do think you're interesting. You play guitar. I think you're interesting, especially in the summer. Like you have this weird flower gardening habit where you put metal in your head, like not metal. Wow, that was a weird way to say it. He plays heavy metal and goes in flower or like gardens with the flowers. He loves planting flowers. I'm trying to get him to change our backyard into a garden, like vegetable garden. But no, the man, 30-year-old man, needs to have his flower gardens while he blasts like heavy metal all summer long. And look at us. Here we go. I just said I was trying to stay on track and I'm into a random story. So my husband, though, he'll tease me about my love for books and puzzles and soup. And he thinks that is boring. So I don't really care how boring he thinks I am or anyone. I am quite content with just myself. The same way that my husband is so content out in the garden and the flowers. People could say whatever they want. They could tell him that gardening and flowers is a waste of time, that it's stupid, that whatever he wants, like people could be mean about it and it wouldn't matter because he loves it and he knows that that's not what he believes. So people can believe what they want. And that's how I feel for majority of things in my life. Puzzles and books and soup all included. So I think those are pieces, like they're a small portion of the giant wheel that is me. And I think that those things make me interesting. So if someone was to tell me I'm not interesting enough, I wouldn't believe that. I think you're talking to the wrong person because I know I'm interesting to the right people and I am interesting to myself. And that's what matters the most. So no amount of money or clothes or accomplishments will make you enough. You have to decide that you are. This is something I've learned from perusing my journals and seeing how often I say that I will feel better when, or I will have peace when, or I can't wait until, I'm very much in the future. And I'm pretty sure they say if you spend time thinking about the past, that's depression. If you spend time thinking about the future, that's anxiety. The only way for true calm is living in the present. And yeah, right now, as you listen to this, no matter what you're doing, it doesn't matter where it is, where you are. Wow. My point is you are enough. That is what I'm trying to say. In the book, there's a line that says, the truth needs to be experienced. Humans have the need to describe, to explain, to express what we perceive. But when we experience the truth, there are no words to describe it. Whoever claims this is truth is lying without even knowing it. And we perceive truth with our feelings, but as soon as we try to describe it with words, we distort it and it's no longer the truth. It's our story. But still, we can try to put our experiences into words. And this is something wonderful, really. It's the greatest art of every human. So I love it's basically saying how we have stories. The truth is somewhere mixed in amongst all the stories. And not to go completely off track, but growing up so religious and now having a very different worldview, I have said for a long time that I believe the truth is a mix of all of the original religions because they're all stories. And they are all perceptions of what really happened. But because the truth cannot be felt, or it cannot be like spoken about, it simply can be felt. The people who were originally there knew the truth, and then they tried to put it into words, and now we have these distortions and controls and all this stuff. People try to use it to tell the same story, but they're getting lost because it's their version. Does that make sense? Yes, it does. I need to stop asking that. So, especially considering that this is a recording and no one can tell me if it does make sense. So let me know. You can go on Instagram and let me know if I'm confusing the heck out of everybody. So the two main points of this chapter were that one, we as humans have no idea who we really are. We only know who we are not. And then we create a story and an image of what we think we should be, and we try to attain it, but it doesn't exist. So that's the first thing, is trying to become, like, how do we become authentic when we don't know who we are? We only know who we are not. And second thing is, all humans are storytellers with their own unique point of view. When we understand this, we no longer feel the need to impose our story on others or defend what we believe. Instead, we see all of us as artists with the right to create our own art. And that was a bit in the book. He talks about how you could have, or his grandson could be offered to have a portrait painted of him by Picasso. And maybe after a week, Picasso shows him the painting, and Miguel might say, like, that looks nothing like me. Like, what are you doing? And Picasso goes, no, that's exactly how you look like to me. And it is simply a story. If I asked all of my friends, or if you ask all of your friends, take 5 of them to write a list of 5 words that they think describe you, and maybe give a little sentence or two of why. How do they think of you? You're probably going to get some different perspectives of people depending on what they saw you go through and what experience in your life they met you through, what stage of your life that they were a bigger part of. So it's a really great way to see that you are you, but only you know who you are. And only you can say that you are enough, because even the people that know you the best, they have a story about you. And it's probably a good one, hopefully, but it's still their story, their perspective. I often think about this as a mom. I've thought about it before that as well, but I know most of what goes on in my child's life, but then we put them in daycare, and now I don't know what goes on for like 6 to 8 hours a day. So I'm not part of those memories. I'm not part of those experiences. With my own parents, I tell them, we talk, but they don't know that like certain things frustrate me. They might not know that of like experiences I have, essentially. Like, I don't tell them everything because it just doesn't feel important. But the stories I do tell them then are intentional. It's very interesting because no matter who we are talking to, and whether it's in person or social media or whatever, we are also telling a story about ourselves. Because unless we were just to have a running commentary about the thoughts and the feelings and everything, which I don't think we could even keep up with it, that happens so fast. And not to mention, I've had feelings and thoughts that are absolutely opposite because my brain is trying to rationalize and my heart is just trying to live. So there's no way that anyone else can fully perceive who we are. And therefore, there's no way that other people can decide that we are enough or tell us that we are enough. We have to do that. So I hope this is all I have for this episode, and I'm hoping that it's given you something to think about as you go into the weekend, and hopefully it's added some value into your life. That is very much the biggest goal of this series, of this podcast. I just want to add value to the world, and if I can change the way that you see yourself for the better, or give you something to think about that helps you change your mindset, that's all I want to do. If you want to engage with the podcast, you can if you want to engage with the podcast, you can do so on Instagram. My handle is She's Doing All Right. And my personals are sarah.g.carter on TikTok and on Instagram. If you've not checked out TikTok, it's a bit chaotic over there. Instagram's definitely a bit more curated. And then the podcast Instagram is just a bit of she needs some work. I'm trying to figure that out. But thanks for being there. Thanks for showing your support. If you like this episode, I would love, love, love if you would go rate it and review it on Apple Podcasts, or you can, I don't know, subscribe, I think, on Apple and Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And I think that's all of that. So I hope you have a glorious week and that you can spread kindness to yourself and others. And in doing so, please remind yourself that you are enough as you are. And remember that the people around you, regardless of how you're feeling, they might not be enough for you, but outside of your perspective, they are enough. I hope that is going to be healing and not hurting. And that is all I have for today. So thank you so much for listening, and I will see you in the next episode.